Joseph Vernet. D'Avignon, 1714. De Paris, 1789. Vernet formed his style during a long stay in Italy, 1734 to 1753, where he made his name as a marine painter. He produced two very different types of seascape: bustling harbor scenes, bathed in soft light, and action-packed images of storms and shipwrecks. Both were equally popular, bringing him a number of royal commissions. Vernet became the head of a proud artistic dynasty. His son, Karl, 1758 to 1836, and his grandson, Horace, 1789 to 1863, both became distinguished painters. Port of Marseille, detail, 7. His is one of a series of 15 views of French seaports, commissioned by Louis XV. 1754, oil on canvas, 165 by 263 centimeters, Musée de la Marine, Paris, France. Hubert Robert. De Paris, 1733, De Paris, 1808. Robert learned his craft in Italy, where he developed a taste for painting lush, overgrown gardens, landscapes, and city views. His most distinctive creation was the Anticipated Ruin, a modern building imagined in a future state of decay. In later life, he proved an able administrator, becoming keeper of the king's pictures. Robert enjoyed a long and successful career. Though he was imprisoned during the French Revolution, he is said to have escaped the guillotine when another man of the same name was mistakenly executed in his place. Architectural capriccio with obelisk Hubert became so fond of this type of subject that it earned him the nickname Robert de Ruines. Point 1768, oil on canvas, 10x 1639 cm, Bowes Museum, Barnard Castle, County Durham, UK. Jean-Baptiste Perronneau. De Paris, c. 1715. De Amsterdam, 1783. Perronneau is one of the leading portraitists of his day, at home working in oils or pastels. His approach was less vivacious than that of his chief rival, Maurice Quintin de la Tour, but his sober, reflective style and his attention to detail won him many admirers. He was well-traveled, visiting England, the Netherlands, Italy, Poland, and Russia. He was a prolific artist, and his work is well represented in many galleries. Portrait of Jean-Baptiste Audry Perronneau shows Audry, a painter who specialized in still lives and hunting scenes, richly attired, and bearing the tools of his trade. C. 1753, oil on canvas, 131 x 105 cm, Louvre, Paris, France. Jean-Antoine Houdon. De Versailles, 1741, De Paris, 1828. Best remembered for his vivid portraits, Houdon was also a versatile sculptor. He trained under Michel-Ange Slotz and Jean-Baptiste Pigalle before completing his studies in Rome. Initially, he made his mark with a series of sensual, mythological figures in the Rococo manner, but he was increasingly in demand as a portraitist. Here, Houdon's approach was direct and unadorned, ignoring the trend for depicting statesmen in classical garb. Houdon portrayed some of the greatest figures of his day, Americans as well as Frenchmen, but he fell out of favor during the French Revolution. In spite of a commission from Napoleon, he produced little of note after 1800. Lifeline. 1741, born in Versailles, 1764–68, studies in Italy, 1767. Gains recognition with his Ecorche figure, 1778, makes studies of Voltaire, 1785, travels to America to make portrait of Washington, 1806, produces a bust of Napoleon, 1828, dies in Paris. Voltaire. Houdon produced several portraits of the philosopher Voltaire. This is the most famous of them. Begun shortly before the old man's death in 1778, it shows him looking out at the world with a quizzical glance that has been interpreted as the smile of reason. 1778–81, marble, height 165 centimeters, Comédie Française, Paris, France. Winter. This is one of a pair of statues showing winter and summer. In true Rococo fashion, Houdon chose to portray the seasons as young nymphs. 1783, marble, Y, height 145 centimeters, Musée Fabre, Montpellier, France. Closer look. Shivering girl. Traditionally, The figure of winter was represented by an old man or woman, warming themselves by a fire. Houdon's decision to opt for a more erotic image was very much in keeping with contemporary taste. George Washington. This is a bronze replica of Houdon's original marble statue in Richmond, Virginia. Houdon traveled to the U.S. to study George Washington in person. 1788, bronze, height 189 centimeters, Trafalgar Square, London, UK. Lecoq, flayed body. This anatomical figure was one of Houdon's early masterpieces. Casts of it were used in many art academies. 1767, bronze, École des Beaux-Arts, Paris, France. In context. Porcelain factories. The Sèvres porcelain factory was established in 1738 and was France's answer to the dominance of Meissen in Germany. It was promoted by Louis XV's mistress, Madame de Pompadour, who enlisted the help of two of her favorite artists, Faleonet, who became director of sculpture, and Boucher, who provided many designs. The Education of Love by Etienne-Maurice Faleonet, after Francois Boucher, 1763, Sèvres porcelain. Etienne-Maurice Faleonet. B. Paris, 1716. D. Paris, 1791. Faleonet came from humble origins and was initially apprenticed to a carpenter, before Lemoyne took him on as a pupil. He made his mark in the 1750s when his delightful figures of nymphs and cupids proved a hit at the Salon. They also impressed two of the royal mistresses, Madame du Barry and Madame de Pompadour, see page 245, and it was through the latter's influence that Faleonet gained his directorship at the Sèvres porcelain works. He found even greater success in Russia, with his daring portrayal of Peter the Great. Newlyweds still visit this to be blessed by the horseman's outstretched arm. Faleonet's cantankerous manner won him few friends, but his writings on art were admired, and he was ahead of his time in condemning the blind adulation of everything that is ancient. Lifeline. 1716. Born into a poor family, in Paris. 1757. His bather is warmly received at Salon. 1757–66. Director of sculpture at the Sèvres factory. 1766. Catherine the Great invites him to Russia. 1778. Returns to Paris. 1782. His statue of Peter the Great is finally unveiled. 1783. Suffers a stroke. 1791. Dies in Paris. The bather exhibited to great acclaim at the Salon of 1757. This was Faleonet's most popular work, and it was reproduced in a variety of different sizes and materials. 1757. Marble, 81 by 26 centimeters, Louvre, Paris, France. Closer look. Modesty. As she steps forward gingerly to test the water, the bather's modest pose is typically Rococo. Her appearance is graceful and erotic, but without a hint of vulgarity, a combination that proved extremely popular with the aristocratic patrons of the period. Peter the Great. This majestic equestrian portrait was Faleonet's most important commission during his 12-year stay in Russia, though it was only unveiled after his return to France. 1782. Bronze, triple life-size, St. Petersburg, Russia. I love simple ideas. They often say more than complicated or far-fetched ones. Etienne-Maurice Faleonet. Jean-Baptiste Pigalle. B. Paris, 1714. D. Paris, 1785. Pigalle was the most versatile sculptor of his time, equally capable of producing light-hearted Rococo masterpieces and grandiose tomb sculpture. Even so, his early career was a struggle. After training with Jean-Baptiste Lemoyne, Pigalle failed to win the Prix de Rome and endured considerable hardship in financing his studies in Italy. But all these efforts proved worthwhile when his figure of Mercury eventually brought him success. The sculpture of the young deity, seated on a cloud, twisting round to tie up his winged sandals, was a triumph. Early versions in plaster and terracotta won Pigalle his membership of the Académie Royale, and Louis XV was so impressed that he commissioned a marble version, which he presented to Frederick I of Prussia. Having made his reputation, Pigalle received a string of important commissions. These ranged from the imposing tomb of Maurice of Saxony, with its majestic allegorical figures, to his dazzlingly original portrait of the philosopher and playwright Voltaire. Lifeline. 1714. Born in Paris, The son of a carpenter, 1736–39 studies in Rome, 1744 statue of Mercury. Wins him membership of the Académie Royale, 1750–58 under patronage of Madame de Pompadour, 1753 designs the tomb of Maurice of Saxony, 1776 completes his striking nude portrait of Voltaire, 1785 dies in Paris. Voltaire Pigalle worked on the head and body separately, using a professional model for the latter. Voltaire was unsure at first, but applauded the result. 1776, marble, height 150 centimeters, Louvre, Paris, France. Mercury attaching his winged sandals. Pigalle's figure was partly inspired by a famous classical statue, the Belvedere torso. 1744, marble, height 58 centimeters, Louvre, Paris, France. Guillaume Coustou. B. Lyons, 1677, D. Paris, 1746. A leading French sculptor, Coustou developed his style in Rome, where he became a great admirer of Bernini's work. His supreme achievement was the Marly horses, in which the violent movement of the animals was balanced by the confident athleticism of their grooms. Unusually, the statues were not linked with any specific myth or allegory. Their classical pedigree is clear, however, as they were partly inspired by the sculptures of the Dioscuri in Rome. Marly horse, one of a pair of statues, also known as the Horse Tamers, commissioned by Louis XV for his chateau at Marly. 1739–45, marble, Place de la Concorde, Paris, France. Johann Baptist Zimmermann. B. Wessebrunn, c. 1679–80, D. Munich, 1758. This German painter and stuccoer came from an area that had a strong tradition in stucco decoration and was trained by Johann Schmutzer, a specialist in the field. Zimmermann's younger brother, Dominicus, 1685–1766, became a celebrated architect, and the pair occasionally collaborated on projects. Their outstanding ventures were at the pilgrimage churches of Steinhausen and Die Wise, where the architecture, frescoes, and stucco decoration blended perfectly into a single, harmonious design. Zimmermann also worked for secular patrons and eventually became court painter in Munich. As in his religious commissions, his work displayed an exquisite delicacy and lightness of touch. Lifeline. 1679–80, born in Wessebrunn, 1685, birth of his brother, Dominicus, who will later become his chief collaborator. 1701, receives his first significant commission from a church at Gosselshausen. 1706, Count of Maxlarain becomes his first major patron. C. 1706, marries Elizabeth Ostermeyer, a chambermaid. 1727–33, collaborates with Dominicus at Steinhausen. 1734–39, produces his finest stucco decorations for the Amalienburg hunting lodge. 1746–54, works with his brother on the church at Die Wise, their masterpiece. 1758, dies in Munich. The Last Judgment, the pilgrimage church at Die Wise, a collaboration between the Zimmermann brothers, is arguably the most spectacular of all Rococo churches. UNESCO granted it World Heritage status in 1983. 1746–54, ceiling fresco, Weiskirch, Die Wise, Germany. Closer look. Rococo's splendor. Zimmermann's fresco is located inside a flattened dome, but his masterful use of foreshortening creates an illusion of enormous space. The undulating, celestial clouds also echo the lines of his stucco work. Johann Michael Rottmayr. B. Laufen, near Salzburg, 1654, D. Vienna, 1730. The Austrian artist Rottmayr may have received his initial training from his mother, who was also a painter. However, his main studies took place in Venice, in the workshop of Johann Karl Loth, where he worked as his assistant for several years. Later, he formed a fruitful partnership with the architect Johann Fischer von Erlach, providing the decorations for many of his buildings. Rottmayr specialized in frescoes characterized by large, powerful figures and a robust sense of movement. Lifeline. 1654, born at Laufen, 1675–87, works in Venice with Johann Karl Loth. 1688, moves to Salzburg, working for the Prince Bishop. 1695 collaborates with Fischer von Erlach at Frame Castle in Moravia. C. 1696 settles in Vienna. 1716-22 carries out decorations at Melk Abbey. 1725-29 paints the fresco in the Karlskirche, Vienna. 1730 dies in Vienna. Hercules slaying the Hydra. Hercules dispatches the many-headed snake with his club, while nearby Minerva rides in her chariot. 1716-22, ceiling fresco, Melk Abbey, Melk, Austria. Paul Troger. Bizel unto Welsberg, 1698, D. Vienna, 1762. Troger was a leading Austrian painter in the period of transition from the Baroque to the Rococo style. He studied in Italy for almost a decade, learning much from the work of Piazzetta, Pittoni, and Ricci. On his return to Austria, Troger gained a series of important fresco commissions, notably at Altenburg Abbey and Getweg Monastery. These frescoes are characterized by intense coloring and a dramatic sense of movement. Later in his career, Troger taught at the Vienna Academy, where he was influential on the next generation. Lifeline. 1698, born in the South Tyrol, early 1720s, travels in Italy. 1733-34 paints frescoes in Altenburg Abbey. 1739 produces decorations for Twatweg Monastery. 1750s becomes professor and later director of the Vienna Academy. 1762 dies in Vienna. The apotheosis of the Emperor Charles VI. Troger's detailed study for a ceiling fresco, carried out at Getweg Monastery in Austria. C. 1739, oil on canvas, 73 by 91 centimeters, private collection.